Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm acting as your ancient archivist today, and we're jumping straight into the pages of a deeply unsettling lost manuscript. We're going to uncover a chilling fable about the ultimate cost of absolute dogma. We'll be examining a profoundly symbolic text that explores exactly what happens when a mind becomes so completely obsessed with order that it just completely shuts out the vibrant, chaotic reality of the living world. It's a haunting story for sure, but beautifully structured, and I am honestly thrilled to unearth its secrets with you today.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. In a realm where ink does not bleed, but freezes. That's the opening right there. We're stepping into what the lore calls the architecture of pride. Imagine a fortress where the very environment reflects an incredibly unyielding mindset. The ink literally locks into place, and wandering these brittle stone chambers is our central figure, the Pale Inquisitor. He's the skeletal guardian, a being quite literally carved from the rigid dogma he upholds. But to really understand this guy, we have to look at what he is so desperately hiding from.
See, the Inquisitor lives in profound terror of the outside world. And that brings us to this absolutely vital concept in the text, the verdant absurdity. The manuscript defines this as the chaotic, thrumming pulse of the natural world. It's a place of messy mischief, formless splashes of gray. To the Inquisitor, the spork of evolution isn't some beautiful miracle of life. No, it's a terrifying wildfire of change. Because he can't control it, he builds himself this gilded cage of linear logic and ancient laws, entirely designed to just deafen his ears to this vibrant, unpredictable reality.
And that brilliantly illustrates our core conflict here. It's a classic showdown. On one side, we have the rigid shore. This is where the Inquisitor basically anchors his soul to what the text calls the spirit of gravity. It's this leaden weight of stasis, linear logic, and frozen black ink. He's choosing the illusion of perfect safety. Then, on the other side, you've got the wildfire, evolution, messy mischief, formless gray. By stubbornly clinging to the shore, the Inquisitor is utterly rejecting the chaotic beauty of life. He's creating a lifeless sanctuary simply because a dead, predictable world feels a whole lot safer to him than a living, changing one.
Moving right along to Act 2, the fractured trial.
In this really dark chapter, the Inquisitor's whole linear logic system faces a tragic test. Into his courtroom of shadows, a place where shadows literally swallow the ceiling while harsh light crowns the judge, a figure known as the Pale Criminal is dragged before him. But here's the thing. The Inquisitor's worldview is so poisoned by his dogma that he doesn't even see a human being standing there. He sees a bridge that broke. He sees a tragic fractured line in a binary world that demands absolute, unyielding straightness. For him, there is zero room for negotiation or nuance.
So how does the Inquisitor process this perceived imperfection? Well, he uses what the text calls the anatomy of the ultimate stain. This is basically his psychological shield, and it happens in 3 steps. First, mirroring and resentment. The criminal reflects the Inquisitor's own hidden depths, which just sparks this intense hatred. Second, the mask of purity. By condemning the criminal, the Inquisitor creates an illusion of his own righteousness. And finally, step 3, mechanical condemnation. Justice is rendered without a shred of empathy, just through the cold, stark stroke of a pen.
The truly tragic irony of his actions is all tied up in this defense mechanism. The Inquisitor paints the guilty in the darkest of solid blacks, viewing the criminal as just a heap of diseases to be pruned. But why? Why go to that extreme? He does it so his own graying edges can look pure by comparison. He's desperately trying to hide his own internal decay and the frantic, irregular beating of his own heart. By crossing the criminal's name into oblivion, he is executing a legalistic revenge against the terrifying mirror of his own humanity.
Which brings us to Act 3, the final shadow. You know, no matter how hard you try, even frozen ink eventually spills. And the stark blacks and whites of his gilded cage, they finally begin to crack. The Inquisitor's rigid structures fail in 3 phases here. First, during the Tribunal of Ash, the borders of his reality literally melt into this featureless whiteout. Second, stripped of his black and white world, he surrenders to the void, becoming the Red Judge. And third, reaching out with a hand of bone, he uses the key of abandoned prayer to lock the doors to the kingdom above. He completely, totally seals his own fate.
Now, think about what this actually means. It is absolutely terrifying. As the Red Judge, his redness isn't some vibrant color of life. No, it's a suffocating dark. By locking those doors above, he realizes a horrifying fact. There is no divine script. There's no salvation coming down from the sky to justify his cruelty. There is only the blinding light of a truth he had spent his entire lifetime trying to execute. His soul just begins to evaporate in the fire of this total, inescapable honesty.
Let's turn to our final chapter, Act 4, The Unfinished Ledger.
As we reach the literal tattered edges of this lost manuscript, we witness this ultimate divergence of paths. Outside, the hero of the broader narrative steps out to find wild lilies flourishing in the organic, messy mud of a thriving wilderness. But inside, the Inquisitor's world collapses inward. He retreats into the spire of total chaos. The neat, controlled background of his life vanishes into an abyssal midnight. Away from those wild lilies, his perfect geometry warps into spirals, and his precious, neat typography just dissolves into jagged, meaningless scratches.
So, the guy who wanted nothing but straight lines, he literally warps into a skeletal horror. He's trapped right at the center of his own crumbling spire. He sits there entirely alone, clutching his ink-stained ledgers. Because he rejected the spark of evolution, because he was so terrified of change, he gets caught in an infinite loop of his own rigid dogma. He is forever authoring a story of stasis, a narrative that literally cannot progress because he purposely stripped it of all life and movement.
And that gives us this incredibly poignant line. The final page of his life did not offer a conclusion. It simply ran out of light. Wow. It's just a profound allegory of what happens when we fear the spark of evolution and the messy, real nature of existence. By trying to lock time and morality into a frozen, perfect state, the Pale Inquisitor didn't achieve immortality, he didn't achieve purity, he just achieved an empty, dark failure that faded into absolutely nothingness.
So as I carefully put this cursed manuscript back onto the archive shelves today, I want to leave you with a real question to chew on. We all have moments where the chaos of the world feels totally overwhelming, but do you cling to your own rigid shore of stasis out of fear, or will you step into the mud and embrace the messy, verdant absurdity of life? Which architecture are you building for yourself? A gilded cage or a thriving wilderness? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating lore with me. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.